As a practitioner, I have to choose my words wisely because what I would tell somebody, say 2 years after D-Day, I wouldn't necessarily tell somebody 2 days or 2 weeks after D-Day. If I'm telling somebody who is 4 years past their D-Day, write a letter to the affair partner and let them know I release you from spending time and energy occupying my mind, body, and soul. Even though you don't plan to send that letter, it's just a cathartic technique that I use. I certainly wouldn't tell somebody who's 2 days or 2 weeks out of D-Day because they'd think I was crazy and run for the hills. So I say that because I encourage you and urge you that no matter who you're watching on TikTok, me included, if it applies to you, it applies to you. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. As with all areas, when we go to hear, political speeches, or even when we go to church or any conference, we eat the meat, enjoy the meat, and throw away the bones. So again, if something I say applies to you, let it apply to you. And if it doesn't apply to you, it's because as a practitioner, I talk to people who are still bear hugging the toilet, vomiting because they just found out an indiscretion, an infidelity, some secrets, some phone numbers under the mattress, some hair, in the car. And then I talk to people who are, 30 years outside of D-Day. So there's going to be things that don't apply to you. And I say this because I was talking to a client this week, actually, who is he says he's a Christian, and that's his, a primary identity of his. He's a Christ follower and a very proud born-again Christian. And so, I was talking to him on that level. And so again, if this applies to you, I want you to take from it what you can. And if it doesn't apply to you, if you're not a believer or this doesn't hit you, it doesn't apply to you. No problem. Anyways, what he was telling me, he says, Mr. J, I no longer trust God. I have been a believer all my life. I prayed for a wife. I prayed for a God-fearing, God-loving wife, and I thought he gave me one. And I was happy, and we were happy. And then I discovered, she was doing things that were very ungodly, having an affair. And one of the things I told him was, God's original design was never to give us heartache and heartbreak. Sin and evil came into this world after the fall of Adam and Eve. And after that, we all are given choices. We now have choices. We have choice, to make good decisions, make not so good decisions. And God's greatest gift to us is the choice to love. So God's not going to take away our ability to make decisions, because then he'd have to take away his greatest gift, which is to love, and he's not going to do that. So, it pained God to have your partner make the decisions that they did. And it even more so pained God to have to have you discover these secrets. But God loved, respected, adored, and cherished you too much to let you keep living blindly. So, just like the footprints in the sand, God said he'll walk with us in our heartbreak. He'll hold our hand. He'll talk with us during heartache. He can't take away people's choices, but if people choose to make certain choices, he could be with us during that reconciliation period. So I just want to tell you, I would be very careful saying, how could God do this? Because God can't take away people's choices. People make their choices. And it pained God. It pained God to have you discover what you discovered. You ever hear, for those of us that have children, have you ever had some news that you had to tell your children that you knew was going to break their heart? You knew it was going to weigh heavily on them. But you want to be honest as parents, and you love your kids enough to say, listen, I'm going to be with you, but I don't have the best news. This discovery hurt our father far more than it hurt you. From a human perspective, this is by far probably one of the most hurtful things we could have ever discovered and gone through. But from a spiritual place, and if you're not there yet, I hope someday you do get there, you realize God loved, respected, adored me too much to let me keep living a lie, living blindly, living in deception. And for both parties that were hurting, it was time to bring light into this. So I encourage you, even on D-Day, instead of calling it D-Day, if you're ready, and if not, maybe be open to, whenever you are ready, replacing this, reframing our mind, that instead of calling it a D-Day, maybe calling it the day God finally answered and honored my prayer.